What's up guys, my name is Liam, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Fantech motion mouse pads. They have 5 different options going from control all the way up to speed, and in this video I'm going to break down how my experience has been with them so far. I'm going to do my best to let you know how the differences in performance is between each one of them, and hopefully I'll be able to help you decide whether any one of these could possibly be the perfect gaming mouse pad for you. So let's check it out. Before we get started today, I did want to let you know these were sent out to me. However, everything you're going to be hearing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. Here's a look of the packaging that each one of these does come included in. They do ship rolled up, and as I've put them on my desk, the corners are still a little bit curled up, but they've done a pretty decent job overall at going flat for me. The size of all of these is coming in at 450 millimeters in width by 400 millimeters in height, and they're sitting at 5 millimeters in thickness. They all come included with a soft rubber base, and typical to any type of a rubber, it does feel a little bit more firm to the touch, though there is some plushness there to where you can push into it. These do come with stitching all the way around the edges, and the stitching sits at about level with the surface. In some instances it might be a little bit higher than the surface itself. Each pad is labeled with an icon and its corresponding color up here, which with a type of a patch that's sewn to the mouse pad up here in the top left hand corner. It is also down here on the back of the mouse pad as well. As I've been using this the entire time, though, I haven't noticed any issues really too much with this getting in my way, since it is so tiny and it hasn't seemed to affect the stickiness of how this plants on my desk. So overall, like any type of typical rubber base, this has been doing a really fantastic job at sticking to my desk and not moving around on me as I've been using it. But they also do have their logo down here in the bottom right hand corner. This is some type of a graphic here that is raised up on the surface, so if you do bring your mouse down here in the bottom right hand corner, you can feel it on the bottom of your skates. All right, so now jumping into the surfaces, we will start with the slowest option, which this is called the Earth, I do believe, and we are going to make our way up. So all my testing that I did is with the Lamzu Maya X, one of the most popular gaming mice on the market currently, with the stock skates. So for the Earth, this kind of feels like an older style cloth surface type of a mouse pad. You get a little bit of a texture there on the y-axis, not a whole lot of noticeable texture there on the x-axis. But I will say with these first 3 options that they are actually very controlled. So with this one, you're going to get a pretty heavy static friction, and even the dynamic friction on this thing. This is a very heavily controlled pad. So I even feel like this can be categorized on the realm of a muddy type of a pad, where the more weight and the more you press into it, it actually gets really hard to move around when you're making your micro corrections. And usually these 100% virgin PTFE style skates do give you a bit of a quicker and smoother glide all around. So just to give you an idea how controlled this thing is, I was even going back and forth to compare it to some of the mouse pads out there that I find to be pretty controlled, even a little bit too controlled for my taste, something like the Lethal Gaming Gear Jupiter. And just some of the differences I've noticed between the 2 pads is this one kind of has a little bit more of a firmer style of a feeling of a texture here on the surface. Just the material that it's made out of, where the Jupiter Pro feels like it's a little bit more soft. But in my speed test comparisons, in real world experience, I don't really notice a whole lot of difference between the 2 pads. I guess that you do feel a little bit more of static friction here on this Earth version of the mouse pad, and the dynamics a little bit slower. But I'll go ahead and really quickly drop a glide test comparison between both of them to kind of give you an idea on what I was finding. All right, so for the next copy that I got here, this is the water version, and pretty much the same thing follows suit for this one. I do feel like the surface of this, though it doesn't feel that far off from the Earth, it feels pretty similar, where you get a very minimal texture here, and this one you can feel a little bit more on the x-axis. The y might feel just a little bit smoother to me, but I do feel like this surface just feels a little bit softer than the Earth does. But as far as the performance goes, they really don't stray that far apart from one another. These are still some very controlled options, and you might be able to notice that it feels just a little bit quicker than the Earth. But again, in my experience, there's not a whole lot of a real world difference that I was finding between them. This does just come out a little bit quicker in my testing. So as you're pushing into this, comparing it to the Earth, you still can get a little bit of that muddy experience, but it just is a little bit less heavy than that version. So I'll drop a speed test comparison between both of them. And I do kind of feel like this just falls a little bit closer in line to something like the Jupiter Pro. So I'll go ahead and drop a glide test comparison between both of these. All right, next up, we got the Fire. And again, the same thing. Fantech has done a really solid job with making these control style mouse pads. This is another highly controlled option where it is very slow. With the surface on this one, I feel a little bit more texture along the Y than on the X. I feel like the previous version, the Water, the surface feels just a little bit softer than this one. And I kind of feel like just with these first three options, they just kind of are just a little bit of a bump up from one another in terms of the performance. This one also is very controlled, and it does have a pretty high sense of static and dynamic friction, though this one doesn't feel as muddy as the other two can, and you get a little bit easier of movement when you're trying to make your micro corrections. So just to give you an idea with the performance on this being faster than the other two, but to show you how controlled it actually is, this was just coming out a little bit quicker to me than the Jupiter Pro, but this is still going to be quite a bit slower and more controlled than something like the Artisan Type 99 or even the Zowie GSR 3. So I'll show you guys the glide test comparison I was getting between all of these. All right, so next up we got the Wind, and this is actually a pretty unique type of a performing surface than a lot of most things that I say that I actually have used. You do get a bit more of a texture here on the surface, and this is where it kind of seems to break away from the cloth style feeling of a surface. The surface of this feels more similar to a speed pad. The reason that this surface is a bit more unique than anything I've used, however, is when you're using it, it does feel like it's a speed pad, so you do get a low sense of static friction where it feels a little bit more slippery than something like the cloth style of a surface. However, the dynamic friction on this isn't really that fast. So as I was going back and forth comparing this to the other speed options, even though, like I said, when you're trying to make the micro adjustments, it does have that quick static there, the dynamic does slow down quite a bit on you. So as I was testing it against other things out there on the market, I kind of felt like this felt more similarly just in the speed to something like the Saturn Pro. And I just want to be very clear with you guys, I'm just talking purely about the dynamics, the glide speed on them. When it comes to the actual using them in the performance, the Saturn Pro is a cloth style pad, again, where this one does feel more slippery down here in the static friction. All right, and lastly, we have the final option here, which is the Lightning, and the Lightning is the fastest version. This is a speed pad. The surface on this is quite a bit different, where it has pretty much a heavy texture. See if you can hear that. So just the feeling of this in general does kind of remind me of something like the 4114 Aero, and even the performance on it is pretty similar. I also found that the Ruin, which is pretty similar to the performance of that, kind of just falls in line with this as well. So this one, you're going to get a really low sense of static friction, and the dynamic glide on this is also pretty quick as well. However, with the texture that you do have on this, I don't feel like it makes it feel too slippery. When you start adding weight on top of the mouse or pushing into the surface, you're actually able to gather a pretty solid sense of control. So I'll just go ahead and drop a really quick glide test comparison. All right, guys, so that about wraps things up on these brand new Fantech Motion mouse pads. And I would say that for what Fantech was trying to achieve here, they clearly nailed it. The description of these and the performance, there's just a little bit of a clear difference. Those first three control options, really solid, even though they are a little bit too controlled for my preference. And I will say that that Wind mouse pad is pretty unique from anything that I've experienced, having what to me seems like a little bit of a faster static and then a little bit of a slower dynamic. My favorite out of all of them is probably going to be this Lightning version, where it kind of falls in line with a lot of the speed pads out there that I've really come to enjoy and perform very well on as I'm gaming on them. And even though I do like this Lightning surface, I do kind of wish that they came out with some different types of versions, perhaps with some bigger sizes. That would have worked out just a little bit better for my personal preference. So if you guys have any additional questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.